Hey YouTube, I want to share with you 10 things that have drastically improved my photography over the last 6 years since first picking up a camera. I'm not here to tell you how to make perfect photos, but I am here to share with you the things that have made my photos better now than they were. So very quickly, before I decide to jump into the list of 10 things and perhaps a few bonus mentions at the end, why have I decided to make this video? See, I've been sharing photos for years and years on my Instagram, and I really enjoy sharing photos. Perhaps that's a topic for a separate video. In the last maybe year or couple of months, I like to open up conversation about photography in addition to sharing my photos. And often, sometimes now, the driver behind something that I might post on Instagram is the subject that I want to talk about, and then I choose photos to support that subject. There's a bit of a shift, as you can see there. It's not just the photo, it's the whole piece alongside it. So in no particular order, the first one, perhaps one of the key mentions for me, is using one fixed focal length. This is a 50mm lens, but using one fixed focal length had a massive impact on my photography because it limits you to one focal length, which forces you to move, think, and see things differently to make them work for that focal length. And you'll find that you'll train your eye to get better and better using that focal length. And then maybe, like I have done, I like a pair of prime lenses, and I train my eye accordingly for both of them to make photos that complement one another. Like all things with photography, I kind of apply my own rules, which of course you can break. But I use a 24 to shoot scenes and a 50 to shoot subjects. Often that will completely switch over, but that's the high level sort of approach that I take, and that I've practiced my eye for over the years with those two focal lengths. That's where I'm most confident, that's where I typically get my best photos, and it's through limiting myself which has made me work harder for the photos. Next, the sweet science of composition. Composition is never mastered, in my opinion. Even what we would call basic or simple compositions, I'm constantly questioning and practicing. Why does this center-framed photo look so much better than this center-framed photo? It might be because of the depth of field that was used, the surrounding contrast, the light, the distance of the subject relative to the depth, how much of the frame that they fill. Practice compositions forever. We will, in my opinion, again, we will never master the rule of thirds or any of these things. We can just continually get better and better and better, and we need to be practicing them as much as possible to do this. So from basic compositional technique, like using the rule of thirds, to combining compositional techniques like the golden ratio and leading lines and the rule of thirds all in one frame, we can practice and practice and practice and continually improve, just like everything else we do with our camera. A quick way on how you can improve your compositional skills is set yourself a challenge that you're going to go out for the day and only use one compositional technique. It could be center framing subjects and then playing around with depth. It could be the rule of thirds and then the way in which your subject is facing on the rule of thirds. Are they looking into the most open part of the frame? Are they looking out of the frame? What feeling does that create? Trial, error, and practice, ultimately. Right, so the next 2 points sort of connect to one another, but this first one concerns ISO. Do not be part of the must shoot 100 ISO camp. It doesn't help. It's frustrating. I have been there, and breaking through this is like this great feeling of, oh, I've got this camera with all these capabilities. Why am I just trying to shoot everything at 100 ISO? It makes photos more difficult. Why do you think some of the most popular film stocks are 400 ISO? Regularly might even see people using 800 ISO. That speaks for itself, I think. So don't be part of the 100 ISO base camp. Yeah, sure, if you can shoot base camp? If you can shoot at 100 ISO, do so. But if you need to shoot at a higher ISO, be it 6400, whatever it is in camera to get the correct exposure, do it in camera, because you're just going to damage your digital file even more if you shoot it at 100 when you should have shot it at 2000 and then in post you raise the exposure however many stops. That's not a good way to go about doing things. If you really, really want to be careful, shoot it at 2 different exposures. But shoot at the right ISO first. The right ISO for the exposure that you need. I feel like I should address the problems that it does give you if you don't raise your ISO. Number one, the one we talked about, having to raise the exposure in post. Number two, it kind of dictates your shutter speed and aperture, which you want to be in control of. ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, and raising the ISO can empower you, if you like, to do that. Right, so this point connects to ISO in a sense, understand shutter speed, and it also connects to using one fixed focal length. Understand the minimum shutter speeds that you can comfortably use with the focal lengths that you shoot. So whether you have, old school rules before all of the stabilization came in, and if you just had steady hands, is people would double the shutter speed of their focal length. So they would shoot a 50mm lens at a minimum of 1/100th. And I kind of apply this if I shoot film, though you can push it more. These days now, with the extent of stabilization that you might have in both your lens and your camera body, you can push this massively. With my A7R5 and my 50, I have been able to shoot half a second photos. Not continuously and reliably, but that knowledge lets me know how far I can push it comfortably and how much I might want to push it depending on how much I want to risk it for that moment. Then what this connects to is ISO, because if you're aware of the minimum shutter speed you can shoot, let's say it's a totally controlled photo, there's no moving subject, so you have to consider shutter speed 4, you can now shoot it at your comfortable zone of shutter speed, which allows you to keep the ISO low comfortably. But if you can't, you can just raise the ISO. Understand exposure deeply. What does that even mean? I think maybe I'm just trying to stretch a phrase that it fits, but what I mean by this is you can set your camera into multimeter and shoot every single photo 0.0 on the multimeter exposure reader and check your histogram. But is that correct? Not necessarily. I have my own approach where I kind of expose for what matters. So I might overexpose photos depending on how much the elements of the photo in the shadow matter to me and the portion of the frame that they make up. And I might, but less often, and I'll explain, underexpose photos if the most important part of the photo to me is in the highlights. I shoot a high resolution camera, 61 megapixels, and I find you just have to throw as much light at them as possible within reason. That works better for the high resolution sensor. That's not always the case with every camera. Cameras now are so good at recovering highlights and they never used to be, so I have shifted in this direction, and I'm exposing for each photo, but I do have a tendency to overexpose ever so slightly with my A7R5 high resolution full frame camera. Finding the sweet spot for your camera is significant in this, and using that to your advantage with each photo that you take is, for me, gaining this deeper understanding of exposure and applying it to your photography. Depth of field. Photography for me is this task of translating the 3D world into a 2D image, and depth of field plays a huge part of this because it is somewhat of a 3D element to the photo. It's technically 3D in how it works. Obviously it's still displayed in a 2D image, but you can most definitely affect how much pop or not is in your photo, or how much of a visual journey of detail is in your photo by the depth that you use to make the photo. I probably should say first, I only work with there being enough depth that works for me in a photo. I'm not necessarily shooting at f52, 32, 22, obviously there's no 52, but I don't need corner to corner detail, depth and sharpness in 99.9% of the photos that I take. That's just my style, my approach, how I'm comfortable with things. You need to find your own place with this. But understanding how depth works in terms of focal length, aperture, and relative subject distance is huge, because the high level understanding is that a shallow aperture creates a shallower depth of field, and that's kind of it. But the subject distance and focal length also play a part in this as well. Longer subject distance creates more shallow depth of field. Closer subject relative to your lens creates more shallow depth of field again, and all of these things come together, and fully understanding how all of this works will help you with your photos. For example, I do one-to-one sessions. A lot of photos that I review with people, I see that they could have shot them at a lesser aperture, which would have given them a much cleaner ISO, because there is not anything in the frame so close that they need to shoot so deep. So understanding this level with depth of field is massively beneficial to your regular practice when making photos. This might seem a little obvious, but a lot of people don't do this. Take a camera with you as much and as often as you can. This especially ties back to our first point of using one focal length. Because you don't need to take your camera bag with your 5 lenses and your tripod and your filters with the whole one lens for the day situation, you might be more inclined to take it with you. You haven't got this, like, oh, do I need to change my lens because I might not be able to get this type of photo? No, you've just got one lens and you're just going to shoot it and you're going to see what works and you're going to make things work with the lens. So I literally just grabbed my camera off the shelf to interrupt the video to talk about the next video. The next video I've shot, which I'll be posting relatively soon, is my use of the Sony 28-70 f2G Master over the last 3 weeks, talking about the comparison between that zoom lens, which is a constant f2 aperture, versus my prime lenses and my sort of preferred options, and share my thoughts between the two. I thought I'd just jump in and say that that's to come. Back to this video, which will probably cause a shift in mindset for many of you. This brings me on to another subject, which we'll make another video about, I suppose, but the idea of, I actually shared a thread about this recently, just saying, like, photographers, in my opinion, again, don't need to own 16 to 600 millimeters in their lens collection. Sure, that's nice for some people, and I used to be that guy. I need to have the Trinity, which was the 16-35, the 24-70, and the 70-200, because that covers every millimeter. The more I shot photos and the more I practiced over the years, I kind of thought, it doesn't really translate to that, and I don't need that. I'm most happy now when I've just got no backpack and just a lens on my camera that's fixed, and I can just dial into the photography. I think it just took time and practice for that shift in mindset, and it's so much nicer on my back without carrying a lens shop with me. But each their own, I guess. So back to this point, which was, take your camera with you always. I needed a reminder. A little point and press, a phone if you can get on with a phone. I've never loved phone photography. I just feel like I want something more tactile. If they put some proper buttons and dials on there, I probably would love it, but they haven't. I don't think they will, so I'll wait patiently. Take a camera with you as often as you can. You'll end up making photos probably in environments that you don't usually make photos in as well, which always translates to progress for me, because different shapes, different lines, different light, different everything, and then that moves its way into the main photography that you typically do and just advances you. Don't just scroll and swipe through Instagram, or if you do people use computers to look at photos? I do. Don't just scan through things and like things and go on. Study the photos that look good. Spend more time looking at them and really try and understand what the photographer was doing when they took that photo. Photo books, I massively recommend. I've got quite a few, and I will just flick through them occasionally. And every now and again, a different photo will catch my attention in a different way because it's a different day, and I will just try and understand what I'm looking at. And then I feel that kind of ingrains into my mind when I'm making photos as well. And often I'll make a photo and I'll think, oh, I've seen this because of a photo I've seen. And I might not even notice that straight away. I might even notice that when I get home and upload the photos, and I think, this is similar to like a type of photo that I saw in this book, and that's probably what's made me see the photo. Whereas if I didn't spend the time flicking through the photos, this wouldn't have happened. Choose what to photograph and when. Light. The subject of light is going to come up here. This could be a whole video again on light, but let's just stick with what and when and how. When the light is harsh and it's kind of, nobody wants to shoot with the complete high sun in the middle of the day, but when it's not golden hour, shall we say, I like to shoot typically tighter focal lengths because I'm just dealing with less environment. And I don't really like to shoot my 14mm prime lens of a landscape when the light is not complementary to that scene. This has helped me. I will compromise on the photos I take because I will work with the available light. I will not just try and get the photo that I want. If the light doesn't complement it, patience. This is just patience, timing, and I guess understanding. Don't just go out with your camera to make photos. This might sound like an unusual tip, but this is something that I have done and continue to do that helps me produce better photos. What do I even mean? I mean, sometimes I take my camera out with one lens on it, maybe another one in my bag, just to practice taking photos. If I get some nice photos that I'll keep, great, but I do this very often and I delete lots of photos. On the odd occasion, I've not even uploaded these photos, I've just deleted them straight from the card. And this is because I think it's healthy or good for my photography skills to just keep practicing, keep shooting, keep using my camera, keep framing things. And it doesn't always have to be about the end goal. And enjoying the process really feeds into this. I love the process of photography, and this helps me with this task essentially. I'd recommend doing this. Maybe don't delete them in camera, but it doesn't matter if you don't get photos. In this day and age where everybody's looking for photos to post all the time, must share, must post, and I understand the pressure, and I feel it sometimes. It's still not the way to continuously improve your photography, in my opinion. And for me, you need to place photography first and sharing photos after. And if you do that, you'll find the improvements will come, and you'll end up with an abundance of photos to share. Problem solved, sort of. I mentioned I'd throw in some bonus tips, and here are 3. Shoot more landscape photos. I could kind of just end it there, but really shoot more landscape. Portrait's called portrait for a reason. Landscape's called landscape for a reason. Shooting all your landscapes in portrait is a thing you might regret, because I did it in the first maybe 2 years mostly that I took photos, obviously because of Instagram, and I stopped, and I'm very glad I stopped, and it changed the way I see things and photograph things, and now I will share them as I want to share them, and I'm happy about that. So yeah, shoot more landscape. The second concerns storytelling. Leave some questions. Don't reveal everything in your photo. Don't give everything away, and that way the viewer gets to question what could be happening, what happens next, where the photo's taken. The list of questions is endless, but if you leave some things out, you let the viewer use their imagination to decide them, and that can make the storytelling type of photos more interesting. There are photos, of course, where just revealing the incredible scene or whatever it is in its entirety makes sense, but my thoughts on a storytelling image are that it should make the viewer think and stop and think. That's better. Tip 3, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about exposure, shooting photos at different exposures. So I know sometimes if I'm at really comfortable shutter speed for the shot, I can take the photo at 1 exposure, then one quick flick of my thumb, I can take the photo at 2/3 less exposure or more, depending on what I want to do. But something I can do if I'm really desperate and it's a strange scenario is flick my camera into bracket mode and set it up so that it'll shoot 3 shots in a row with 1 stop of light difference between them. Then I get 1 frame at 0, 1 at -1, and 1 at +1, meaning +1 stop of exposure or -1 stop of exposure. Then when I get home and upload them to edit, I can choose which one to work with, or I can even stack the 3 into a HDR, which I don't do too often, but it's always nice to have as an option. I debated on whether I should include that 3rd tip, but it's something I have done a couple of times, so there it is. So that's it for today. 10 things that have helped me with my photography that I'm sharing with you. 3 random bonus suggestions also on storytelling, shooting landscape, and the weird bracket mode thing that I decided to throw in. There might be some interesting comments in response to that one. I will wait. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative and helpful. If you like this style of content, it's very helpful for me to know so I can make more. And I will catch you in the next one.